Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Welcome to the third episode of Season 3 of Build of the Week. Today's episode showcases a character created by a Path of Exile community member called RRT Sin. His level 90 ranger uses both a devastating elemental area attack and a very high damage single target physical attack fired by a trap. Due to the items and skills chosen, both attacks rely heavily on damage over time, which this character specializes in. His area of effect skill is Ice Shot. The passive tree investment in arrow piercing allows the skill to hit multiple times in a cone shape. Upon getting a critical strike, the 3 Dragons unique helmet causes the ice damage to ignite enemies rather than freeze them. This burning is spread between enemies because of the elemental proliferation support gem. The Herald of Ash skill causes the physical and fire damage overkill to also spread. In this case, the 3 Dragons causes it to shock enemies, increasing the damage they take by 50%. The result is that a single ice shot can cause a large group of monsters to all burn to death upon a critical strike. Because part of Ice Shot's damage is physical, Mana Leech applies and covers the skill's mana requirements. It's interesting to see that he gets his area of effect from Ice Shot's natural cone shape and arrow piercing, rather than support gems that sacrifice damage. To supplement the use of Ice Shot against groups of monsters, the build uses a clever trick involving puncture traps against single targets. The Chin Sol unique bow grants you 100% more damage at close range. He has supported the puncture gem with both trap and point blank. When a trap triggers, the arrow doesn't have to travel far to hit its target, so the significant bonuses of both point blank and Chin Sol ramp up its damage. The character's specialization in critical strikes causes this to deal enormous damage against single targets. Both Chin Sol and the King of the Hill passive cause knockback. In addition to unconditional damage over time, puncture also damages targets as they move. The knockback counts as both immediate movement and forces monsters to have to travel to close the distance, hurting them further. In addition to the Chin Sol bow and 3 Dragons helm that we've discussed, this version of the build uses a couple of other non-essential unique items. The Belly of the Beast armor is generally a good choice of armor, but the build author notes that the 50% increased flask life recovery rate combines well with a copy of the newly introduced Eternal Flask that has been rolled to have the catalyzed prefix. This results in a single quaff of the flask recovering 2500 life rapidly. The Malagaro's Virtuosity gloves are used for their high critical strike chance and damage. The other items in this budget version of the build are rare items. The character's passive choices are interesting. He makes use of the new bow layout introduced in Forsaken Masters. The King of the Hill notable is used to improve critical strikes and to add more knockback. Multiple passives are chosen to augment his traps, including Clever Construction, which makes him immune to damage for a few seconds. Both Acrobatics keystones are used to supplement his defenses. These Pierce passives were chosen to improve the number of enemies hit by an Ice Shot. Damage over time passives such as Entropy were allocated because both of his skills benefit from this. We strongly suggest that you check out the guide for this character, provided by the player who created the build. It's incredibly well written and is honestly a pleasure to read. It's linked in the description of the video and covers a lot of neat tricks not mentioned here. In the guide, the player describes 2 sets of items. One of them is the cheaper version you see here, and the other is a 6-linked fully unique set of items that has its own set of benefits and drawbacks. Because this character is an established standard character, it has access to quite a lot of items that aren't present in the challenge leagues. This video covers a version that isn't too hard to assemble. The build has 1 physical damage and 1 elemental damage attack. Hybrid builds like this are always interesting to see because they gain their damage from specializing in a less obvious axis such as damage over time. If you're new to Path of Exile and would like to play, just head on over to pathofexile.com or search for it on Steam. We recently released the Forsaken Masters expansion and new leagues with fresh economies, so it's a great time to get into the game. If you'd like to submit a build for next week's episode, just post a build guide in the class forums on pathofexile.com. Thanks for watching and see you next time.